Hey folks, how are you? The new year's finally here, so you want to be able to put some skin in the game somewhere, right? Because you are a bit passionate about your endeavors, you're a bit passionate about the sports you follow, maybe even the teams that you also follow. So why not do so over at the #1 site for betting and trying to be able to earn some cash? Hey, you never know what's going to happen, right? Luck is always a very fickle one when it comes to the world of sports. So why not go to One Win? That's the one place where you'll be able to enjoy the best offers, the best propositions. So make sure you go through with your promises and we'll see where things end up playing out. One thing I do recommend for you is the Premier League match between Newcastle and Manchester City. Hey folks, how are you? Hope everything is going well with each and every one of you. For starters, it's interesting to hear an interview that was done over at RMC over in France with Nasser Al-Khelaïfi, main man over at Paris-Saint-Germain, or Petit-St, as many are now talking about them, because as you hear the fire trucks in the back. Al-Khelaïfi talks about Leo Messi leaving, and there was a quote that he said, some things need to be said when you're here, not when you left. Well, that and his definition of disrespect ends up being, I guess, completely different to everyone else's, because I'll give you 3. Number 1, as we well know, everything that happened with PSG, it wasn't the most pleasant of experiences. It wasn't pleasant how he got there. Of course, Messi himself was appreciative of the fact that PSG opened its doors to him when the whole Barcelona debacle came. He just wasn't comfortable. Look, keep in mind, and now I'm not making it sound like Messi and his family left to Paris in the middle of the night, having to scurry looking for somewhere to be able to find refuge. No. It's difficult that when you have certain timetables that you have to have in place, that you end up going to a team or going to another city and having to readapt when you didn't have to. One thing is moving when a job is set and you have a plan and you have everything set in a span of weeks that you're planning on being ready to be at that place. Another thing is having to scurry for something because of certain obligations that you have, looking for a job somewhere and whatever came up, we have to go now. No, it's understandable. On both ends, it's understandable, the circumstances of the moment. But, number 1, PSG didn't treat Messi very well. The fans, they're the most shit fans that you can ever encounter, because of the way that they treated a player that came to a club that really enhanced their profile, if anything else. Player that, from a trophy standpoint and from a prestige standpoint, had much more prestige than PSG did. Number 2, and he was very right, he was the only player on Argentina's squad to not get recognized in front of the fans. Every other player got recognition, whether it was, I'm not saying PSG didn't recognize him. I'm saying that the recognition that he received seemed very weird, very strange, very awkward, very tasteless to a certain extent. Because every other player from that Argentina team ends up going back to their club, and a huge tribute is done in front of the fans at the club. Huge presentation, huge gala, if you will, giving tribute to the Alexis McAllisters, the Julian Alvarez, all these players, of course, that were part of that World Cup winning side, except Messi. Messi was given kind of a hero's welcome at the training ground where Paris Saint-Germain ended up playing, or practicing, I should say, but never was given tribute. Now, wasn't even recognized by the organization in front of the fans. And again, the fans were probably the worst ones ever because of the way they treated him. The way, was it one of the best related? No, it wasn't. But then they unjustifiably were criticizing him. And keep in mind, a lot in the media in France were also doing the same. and hearing some of the criticisms that they had of him ended up being kind of ridiculous, especially knowing, and it came to a crescendo after the World Cup, because the French were so bitter that Argentina ended up beating them, and Messi was, of course, the main face of that triumph, that, of course, it ends up being very difficult for them to swallow, and they end up blaming Messi for PSG not being able to even get out of the round of 16 in the Champions League. Well, there were many others. I mean, we can start looking at Gianluigi Donnarumma one year and what he was unable to do, or what he ended up doing, that ended up having him see PSG get knocked out by Real Madrid. You see a team that wasn't really structured properly, that ended up being a very top-heavy team, that when you looked at the midfield on back, it wasn't very solid. There was a lot of doubts. That wasn't Messi's fault. That wasn't Neymar's fault, and it certainly wasn't Mbappe's fault. So from that perspective, yeah, there was a lot of unjust criticism in that direction. And there was a quote by Neymar, too, recently saying, hey, you know what? Our lives, his as well as Messi's, were, I guess, in his estimation, living hell in Paris because they miss Barcelona so much. And to a certain extent, I would tend to agree. But that, now, with Neymar, it ends up being his fault. So he really can't say too much when it comes to that. Amidst all that criticism, PSG stayed silent. PSG stayed silent. PSG didn't go out and defend him. PSG, now, they went out and defended him when, of course, things started getting a little bit out of hand. But outside of that, Third of all, despite all that, Messi did think about renewing. Messi did have in the cards staying in Paris. Okay? The agreement was set. Everything was set. We all know the details in terms of that. But there was one question that wasn't answered. And this ends up being the one that I end up questioning Nasser Al-Khelaïfi in terms of his interpretation of respect. Messi asked, what is the project? He never got an answer. It's funny that after Christian Galtier is let go as coach, Messi leaves. A couple of days later, Luis Enrique arrives. And it was interesting because I have to go back to an interview that was done with Guillem Balaguer, who, of course, recently wrote Messi's updated or most recent biography. He ends up saying, you know, if I'm not saying he would have, I'm saying if Messi would have known that Luis Enrique was going to be the next coach of PSG, he probably would have stayed. He probably would have. There's a possibility that could have happened. But no one knew what was going on. He didn't know what was going on. And that was the reason why, and the way things were going at the club, that he decided not to stay. And it's understandable at this stage of his life, because he shouldn't be getting the disrespect that he did. Now, when you end up being disrespected, you sometimes get some type of disrespect back, or what you perceive as disrespect coming back to you. And that's what PSG deserves, every single bit of it, because they treated a player that really wanted to make this team better, that really was committed to a project, that maybe at times didn't know where he found himself, but was willing to kind of adapt to do the best that he could. And still, PSG refused to give him that opportunity. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Look, I'll talk to you very soon with another video. I do have to ask you something, and it kind of not embarrasses me, but it does. I don't feel 100% comfortable, because when it comes to this, I am always very happy to do the content, but I've gotten really attached to doing these videos. I've really enjoyed doing these videos on a constant basis, and I'm really enjoying doing YouTube. I really am. And it's slow. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to be getting, a massive following. I'm not looking for that. If I get it, it's a blessing. If not, then that's fine too. It's just a place where I can kind of express myself a little bit better. But I do need your support, and I do need you guys to like. I do need you guys to make sure that the algorithm knows that I exist. I know that in terms of the overall span of things, maybe I'm not as well known or as popular as many others, but I do speak my mind. I do try and be honest and as candid as with you as I possibly can. So with all that in mind, make sure you do support. Maybe you sure make sure you do like. Make sure you do everything that everyone else begs of you. But I kind of humbly ask you to do that in order to continue this, because I'd like to see this go into greater heights and invite people and go places and find better ways of expressing my ideas, and need it through your support. We'll see what ends up happening, and I really would appreciate you guys be able to do that. So, guys, have a good one. Take care.